Awesome. So welcome all to our third ExecuLearn workshop, which is about grants. So here with me today, I think for this one, we got Ingrid, our Club and Societies officer. And for those guests watching pre-recorded or for those here present today, thank you for coming. And I hope you learn everything there is to know about grants for your club or society. And yeah, we're going to run this session again next semester if you do want to watch something in person, like live. So I guess for those, this is probably a question more posed if there's a lot of people in this in our current session right now. But I guess for Hosna, thank you for coming. Do you have anything that you want to get out of this session? Anything that you wanted to know before we go? Or
Sorry, I couldn't get you.
we just wondering. So the question in front of you is what do you want to get out of this session in this grant session?
I would like to know the benefits and the beneficiaries, maybe.
Hmm, okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about yeah, different things in relation to that as well. So this is about the Club Society's grants. So just a little bit about an overview of grants. And please feel free to stop me if you have any questions, and Ingrid as well, but feel free to jump in. But yeah, UTAS grants are available from SAF, so that's our student service and amenities fee that students, if you may or may not know, the students pay that a percentage amount per unit that you study. And so SAF and the board, our board of management, we develop and promote we pay us to promote for clubs to promote a vibrant and fun and inclusive student experience at UTAS by running quality events, services, programs, initiatives, so everything that clubs run. It's designed to benefit group of students, not just individual students. So prior to that's basically what a grant is. And so prior to applying for a grant, you need to have submitted and approved an event application and a risk assessment. I'll also go in a little bit later on other requirements in order to receive that funding. But in general, per grant, per event rather, we'll only consider one grant, and only one claim could be approved per approved grant. So you can't have multiple applications for an event, and you can't have multiple claims lodged for a single grant. And invoices, receipts for that must be kept and must be provided for all expenses to be claimed via the grant claim form. Amounts will not be paid where invoices, receipts are not provided. So that means basically if you lodge a grant for, say, some equipment and you quoted a number and plus the benefits and all that sort of thing, and then that gets approved. And let's say you decided to send us an invoice with additional items that weren't included in your grant application, then we will only consider the amounts that you applied for. Generally, not anything extra or additional. In the same way, if you lodge an application for X amount of dollars and that all gets approved, but you end up underspending. So you only provided the invoices for certain items that you put in your original application form. Then unfortunately we can't pay that off as well. So make sure you've kept everything and you've documented everything properly and you've kept those receipts. So as I mentioned, in terms of eligibility for even applying for grants or having your application considered for your grant, you firstly for your club you need to be reaffiliated for that year. So for 2025, for a grant that's already passed, so the reaffiliation from last year has expired the 31st of March of this year. So this year is the 2025 to 2026 reaffiliation year. So which expires the 31st of March in 2026. So by this point, you should have had already lodged your re-affiliation form. Otherwise, please do that as ASAP. That's one of the barriers to being able to be eligible for for your grants. You also need to have 10 current UTAS student members and 51% UTAS student members. For your entire membership needs to be 51% UTAS students. You need to have also lodged an event application form and a risk assessment via our rubric portal. And our next session will actually delve into planning and running your event. So please also attend that session if you want a refresher or if you're completely new, because these sessions tie in together. So that next session is the 24th of April, which I'll also talk about later. And also, if the grant application is for an event or activity or an adventure club gear purchased, the following is also required. So you need to have lodged and received approval for the event relevant to the grant you're applying for. And you need to have received the approval for the risk assessment. So the event application and risk assessment they're tied up together. You need to have those approved. Usually our team approves that. And you'll know that when you receive a rubric or QPay notification stating otherwise. So just note that both documents need to be approved, and if they're not, then you're not covered for that event or activity. So again, please visit the next workshop as well for information on this. So as I said, this is sort of repeat of the first bit, but it's just making sure that the grants are inclusive. It's there for events that you run that make a difference. You give helping them connect and develop, and it aligns with our values. So the best way actually to summarize grants would be this flowchart right here. So the next few slides will divide these this flowchart segment, and again, you can find this in our website. Ingrid, did you want to talk about the first half of this one?
So just going back to what Chris said, your society, first of all, has to be affiliated through rubric. Once you submit your paperwork, which is your AGM minutes, your committee re-affiliation form, and your membership list, we look at that and approve that. So once that's done, you would have a look at submitting your grant then, and you would have to have a look at submitting your budget for the year and reviewing the grant information and having a look at the cutoff dates on the TUSA website, and then identify your event activity and work out what you want your grant for. Can you pop on the next slide there, Chris? Yep. So the grant request must fall under one of the following categories. So, you know, you've got lots of different categories there. So it might be that you want a capital grant, which is a grant for mainly gear. So large one-off capital purchases for equipment that needs to be replaced. Most of that's like our sporting clubs and that, where they might need gear replaced. Sometimes they need trailers, occasionally a boat or something like that. An activity or event, most of our grants that come in for clubs and society are for activities and events like balls or dinners or barbecues, workshops, things like that. So they must align with the TUSA values and promises and the aims and the objectives of the club or society. Maintenance grants are there to help support the upkeep of equipment that you use for running the club to help it keep running and be active. Work health and safety grants are there to support the club being run safely and to make sure that they comply with work health and safety regulations. Conference travel grants are there to help you if a club or society wanted to go off and you know, like sometimes we have med and law go to different conference meetings and things like that, and we can assist them with travel grants to help them pay for airfares and hotel accommodation. and they can apply up to, that's actually changed now to $350 per student. And the thing that they have to do when they go along to a conference travel grant is to be, when they come back, they need to be able to share that information with the rest of the members in their club or society, so that it benefits everybody in that club or society with what they learn at that conference. So that's something that they can apply for that benefits all of their members. With big events, that's discretionary funding that can support a significant event on campus that caters to a large number of students. And a startup grant is for a new club or society to help them get their first event off the ground, to help them attract new members to their club or society. That is now capped at $250. So first thing that you need to do is create a budget for your grant, and you can find a template on our website to help you with that. So some of the things that you might consider there for your budget is, what do you need, to do, what are the items there that you need on your budget? So, first of all, on your budget, what sort of income have you got coming in for that event? Have you got any sponsorship coming in? Have you got are you charging a ticket price for that event? So they're the sort of things that you capture in there as your income coming in for that event. And then you have a look at all the expenses for that event. So like if it's a barbecue, do you have to fill up gas cylinders? Do you have to pay for sausages, bread, sauce? Do you have to, pay for the hire of you wouldn't have to pay for the hire of a venue, but, there are other things that you have to hire. Do you need decorations, things like that? So, it's just about creating, thinking about all of those costs associated with that event, because they're the sort of things that when you submit your grant, that's what the committee will look at, all the expenses, what money you've got coming in for that event and what money you've got going out for that event. So then you complete the grant application on the Rubric website and you attach your budget to that. And then when the grant committee meet, they assess your application, and then you need to make sure that you go back into Rubric and keep an eye on an email from Rubric stating whether your grant's been successful or not. So usually when the grant committee's met, you could expect to have an email on the outcome of that within a couple of days, so that you know whether it's been successful or not. Once you've purchased all of your items for your event that's been approved, just make sure that you keep all of your receipts, and then you can, once your event's been held, you submit your grant claim on Rubric and you submit all of your receipts for that. If your grant has been denied, Bronwyn, who's our Student Experience and Events Officer, she would send the email through Rubric and she'll give you the reason why your grant's been denied. And and if you're not happy about that, you can always shoot an email and give an explanation, and it can always be reconsidered by the grant committee if you're not happy with the outcome of that.
So I'll just quickly speak on this one. This is more for those of you who are watching who are from adventure clubs. For sporting and adventure clubs, there's a slightly different sort of setup, but it's exactly the same. But it's mostly there's a leeway there for assistance in purchasing equipment that you require for ongoing sporting or adventure activities, so aka equipment. So at our discretion, the grant committee's discretion, we may agree to pay up to 75% of the purchase cost or 100% of the equipment cost for new clubs. But this doesn't generally include personal items, so anything that you would be considered as a personal belonging, like a jersey or something, that we won't consider that stuff, or uniforms basically, because they become individualized or personalized, and so yeah, it's not something we'd consider. And obviously we'll provide these to assist clubs with undertaking large projects to advance your goals, your objectives. So things we could apply for a grant for would include, not limited to, but include equipment purchases, repairs and replacement, skills training aimed at improving long-term sporting performance. So we've got something like wilderness first aid for adventure clubs, which is subsidized to a certain amount, and we usually do it through UTAS TAFE. So that's something that is paid for, but doesn't have to be lodged directly through grants, but it is something that is part of a program that's available at the moment. In relation to equipment, in terms of what you're allowed to spend on, that will essentially be allowed to be reimbursed, would be equipment used in the pursuit of your activity. So, like for example, additional rafts or equipment. And also administration costs with the purchase and planning of equipment and funding for the repairs of that in case there's wear and tear or it gets broken. But it doesn't include anything that was for any damages caused due to negligence or willful actions of a particular party. So if it was just a wear and tear, then yes, it'd be considered. But if it's negligence or then it won't be. And all equipment purchased through a capital project grant shall remain the sole property of TUSA, especially when you wind up. That goes back to us. And equipment itself, when it's in operation, it needs to be held in trust by the club, who shall have exclusive management and control of the equipment. So you can't like rent it out and then charge or something, and you're responsible for the ongoing cost of it, for sort of maintenance. Is that right, Ingrid? Cool. And of course, application requirements. So in a nutshell, when you're applying for a large capital project grant, you must have an outline of the proposal for which the grant is sought. So what it is about, the number of current UTAS students and non-student members. So you got to divide those together. And you also have a membership fee charged for current UTAS students and non-student members. So you got to detail those, like the different number of students, the fees that you charge, plus also 2 quotes are required for items over $500, which needs to be included. So talked about this before, but when you're applying for a grant, you lodge a grant application. So that's just in QPay, Rubric. When you click login to Rubric portal, then you go to forms, then grant forms. And then when you're in this page, you just click that and then you click view all. So Rubric changes the location of this from time to time. They used to be in the top right hand corner, but now it's at the bottom left. You just need to click that and click view all to click to view grant application form, clubs and societies. So I'll just show you a quick example of where that is. So I'm hoping you could see, could you see my, so yep, this is what you could see now. Let me just share so you could see the form, Ingrid. Yep. So here you go. We've got, this is an example of the form. So it's got the applicant name, then your email, provide us with the name for the application. This is usually the name of your event. But would you put that in? And make sure that when you're completing this application form, that you keep it consistent with the name of the event that you have applied for your risk assessment or event application, because Ron, who's the secretary for the grants committee, actually keeps track of this and looks through the different applications. So please keep it consistent, so that way, saves everyone time, but also ensures that you are applying for the right grant and that it gets considered. Of course, and again, the date of application, the different grant types, which Ingrid has mentioned previously, but also I'll detail further the different limits. You also need to provide an outline of the purpose or proposal for which you're seeking for that funding, plus also how this funding will benefit the clubs, your members, anyone participating in this event. And also a question of if you're receiving any external funding. So for example, if you're running a big event and it has a coverage for a grant by, say, the council or any other ones, that's something you'll also need to include for us to consider. And this is, of course, the next bit is where you upload your budget template. So we have a finance template on our website, which you could also find on our flowchart as a link there, and then attach any additional information that you feel that you will support your application. And then at the very bottom is how much funding you would like. So once you've put that in, it's fairly sizable, but it's fairly straightforward as well. And once you have that locked in, then you submit the form. So next one, ensuring again, this is what we've said, is that an event application and risk assessment must be submitted via rubric and approved by the team, which is us, before you hold the event or activity. And we can't fund events or activities that had already taken place, so it has to be relevant for the current grant round. So for example, if you have an event or an activity that's happening in, say, May, then you could apply for the grant either on the month of May or ahead. Like say if you could apply for it for April, for example, but you can't apply for something that's already passed. So if your event happened in February, you can't apply for that grant in for April or May, something like that. It has to be for that current round. It has to happen at least as well before the deadline, like by the deadline. So for capital gear, again, this is what I mentioned. You just have to apply for funding for that event with the description, name, event, time, venue, location, expected number of attendees, and also the purpose for which that is sought, which is what you've seen in that form. For grant limits, so this is more in detail to what has been mentioned on the flowchart. Again, these have the updated grant caps as well. So for capital, there's no limit or cap. It's just no cap due to the nature of what these grants support at the discretion of the grant committee. But when it comes to things like banners, like with terms of banners, we do provide individualized two-sub banners, like a custom-made one, which is usually facilitated by Ingrid, and redesigned by our marketing and communications officer. So if you're if you're a new club or you are looking at acquiring a new banner because you've not received a banner from us previously, you can email us at clubs at tusa.utas.edu.au to speak about having a banner for your club. It's usually your logo that we provide or a photo and then our TUSA logo as well. When it comes to the work health and safety, usually this is necessary for clubs to meet risk assessment requirements. So that's why we usually fund that like in full. But if you're a club that's looking at a first aid kit, like a basic one with a snake bite kit, you don't have to lodge an application for this. You could actually just email us and inform us about your event and what you need that first aid kit for. And we've got some in stock in our housing store, and we could provide you with that one as well. But if you're talking about wilderness first aid, that's also something that's subsidized. You have to be a domestic student, and you have to be a full-time domestic student, and yeah, you're thinking about staying with our doing your activities with the club for long term, like you have long-term commitments for the club. We usually limit this to 2 students per club per year. So if you're thinking of going on multiple different field trips and you require first aid, wilderness first aid, because you're going into a remote space, then yes, please contact us about that. And you'll have to enroll specifically at TASTAFE. For activities, of course, this could be, majority of it, different variety of events. The capped amount includes any funds that grant any funds granted towards food, and also the food supplied there, which I will mention in a bit. And only one grant application will be accepted per activity, so it has to be bulked up together, and you have to dictate specifics on the breakdown of those things, which is also should be in line with your finance template. Majority of your attendees must be students because it's a SAF, so it has to be benefiting students mostly, or all, better if all. And also the events must also demonstrate financial sustainability. So you can't just charge something really low and then expect the grant to cover the rest of it, because that's not how it works. It has to be substantiated by your tickets as well, and demonstrate you've demonstrated that you're sustainable. For food, so I believe, Ingrid, this is already increased. Is that right? By how much?
Chris, those caps there are right. So $5 per head for breakfast, lunch activities, and $7 a head for meal time, like dinner time events, and $3 for snacks per head, capped at 150. So they're the correct limits now.
Awesome, thank you. Also for events and activities, like things like single-use plastics, they're not funded. As you know, you may or may not be aware, there's now a single-use plastic ban in Hobart, and so we advise you to apply for free event catering supplies that like biodegradable cutlery, plates and cups. You don't have to lodge a grant application for this because we also provide them in our housing store. So you just go through Bookable, which will also discuss how to use or sign up for on the next workshop, because we could supply these out. We got biodegradable cups for whether that's for alcohol or just for general drinks. We also got biodegradable forks, knives, and spoons as well. And other things, decorations, so up to $50 per event and $100 per bowl. So if you're running a bowl for your society or club, then there's, in terms of decorations, that's the cap that we provide. But it is, of course, evaluated on a case-by-case basis, depending on what's been mentioned to us. Printing and advertising as well is a cap of $30. So that's like your poster certificates and promotional brochures, anything that you put up there, that's $30 a cap. The DJs, now, because this is a bit of a debatable one, it is at the discretion of the committee. So you just let us know what you just need to include that into your budgeting in terms of the cap limits. Security is up to 75% of the cost. So if you've gone to an event and like you book, let's say you booked a Franklin Wharf something, and then they charge you for the security. Of course, it's within their right and discretion to do so. You just they could forward you the charges, and of course, will help cover about 75 up to 75% of that cost. So you'll need to also take that into consideration when you are budgeting for your event. And usually on campus, if you're running something on campus with alcohol, you will need a minimum of 50 attendees is when you would need to start inquiring about security. But if you're below that, you'll just need to have your sober reps ensuring that the event is safe. But once you reach the 50, or you expect to reach 50 attendees, including your committee members or sober reps, then that's where you need to inquire about security on campus. For activities like live music and bands, there's also $400 cap, and it's expected that the rest of this expense is covered by your ticket pricing, because really most of the time the bands are usually one of the center of the event, so therefore it's expected you cover that amount. Also bowls and dinners, again $1,500 capacity cap limits for that. This goes towards your venue hire and up to 75% of security costs. So this is all bundled up together. AV equipment and decorations. Keep in mind, we do have audio video equipment like your speakers and mixers. So you can hire it from as well rather than applying for a grant. Just ask us or email us about that. And also, again, for end of year balls and dinners, as per our staff, like our TUS policy and regulation, please do consider extending an invite to our TUSA and UTAS reps. So UTAS in particular, like your professors, and for TUSA, like us or state council to attend our ball. If conference, travel, sporting, and representation, we've got the different caps here. So $350 for domestic travel per current UTAS student, $1,400 for total domestic travel grant cap at this amount. This is all bundled up as travel and accommodation. So domestic 350 could be something like you're just traveling sort of interstate in between. If you are traveling internationally, it is a $600 travel grant cap, but also $1,200 total for the whole thing, which includes conference registration cost.
So Chris, that would allow for 2 people to travel internationally, and for the domestic, that would allow for up to 4 students for the same conference travel. So it's roughly like $350 per student, up to 4 students traveling for domestic travel and 2 students for international travel.
Thank you. So, and last but not least is the startup grant. So this is a one-off grant for newly formed clubs and societies, which is $250 that it could be used for your first meeting, event expenses, and other startup expenses. So we'll provide this. It's usually sort of an automatic one. Once we receive created your bank details, which you have to have informed us during the creation of your account of your club, and yeah, it will be paid off and minuted in the corresponding club council CNS grants committee meeting. So what we can't support through grants. So there's plenty of things to look out for. One is that alcohol, we can't fund it through grants. If you're supplying food and beverage at AGMs, at your annual general meetings, your end of year ones, we can't we can't fund that as well. Prizes for individual clubs or society events, or prizes in general, we can't fund that. Gambling, gifts, tobacco in any form whatsoever, like your vapes and all that as well, we can't fund that. Payment of any fines imposed on a club. So if you've ever received a fine, that'll be up to you, your responsibility, not paid through staff. Brewing equipment, so anything really in relation to alcohol. For that. Single-use plastics, as I mentioned before, is not funded through grants. And if you're trying to apply for a grant to support fundraising donations, like donation directly, that can't be supported through student money. But we can support an event or activity to enable you to start doing fundraising, but not directly to fund donations. Also trophies for events and sport, which is technically considered a prize. Normal operations like your personal transport costs, like gas and like all that, as part of your BAU or something that can't be funded through staff. Any items that become personal properties, again, what I mentioned earlier about uniforms, can't be funded through staff, and as well as for any teachers, coaches, trainers, or players. Like you'll say, if you have a dance teacher or you have a tennis coach, that can't be paid through by staff. They'll be up to you as a club, but you can't apply for that. Now for grant cutoff meeting dates, here is a 2025 version. So we've already passed the March one. The next grant round will be in 22nd of April on Tuesday, so about 7 days from now. So you'll have to have lodged your corresponding grant application form by this date. 7 days later, we will have our committee meeting. So it basically gives about 5 business days for the grant secretary to compile and approve amounts in between and discuss the rest of it. Um, compile them all together corresponding, and then after the grant committee meet, we'll have that discussed by the grant committee meeting, and if successful, that's only when you could lodge a claim after that, which then they'll tell you exactly how much you're eligible to receive. So make sure again that you've got the receipts for that. So that's for the rest, it goes up until October. So in terms of assessing a grant application, again, make sure you have provided details on everything you want to apply for and how that will benefit the the student community and your club. And if also make sure that you're being realistic with your funding. So we'll assess how many students that will actually benefit. So if you've only got like 10 committee members or 10 students attending your event, then we won't give you $500. It has to be realistic, like ratioed in terms of like the cost benefit sort of analysis. And of course, again, we won't fund events or activities held in private homes, right? So you can't have a party at your house and then get that funded through SAF. It has to be in a proper thing. And again, we'll know about this when you lodge your risk assessment. And also, you got to ask about what what is it contributing and how is it benefiting everyone. Because we might not always fully fund an activity, but you need to try to be self-sufficient. So make sure you consider how much your club is contributing towards the cost. Again, with your ticketing and everything else, make sure you consider other more affordable options if you're aware, or at least charge a gold coin donation. Of course, there's a lot of case-by-case basis in terms of uh, altruism and everything that you're trying to benefit, but make sure that you keep that in mind. And we understand that not everything could be held on campus, and some events are more suited to a particular venue. So again, consider your options to enhance your student experience. But we will look favorably at events where you hold it on campus. So if you're successful with your application, then lodge your grant claim form. Again, exactly the same like page as you go, except it's at the very top right there. So grant claim form club societies at the bottom left corner. That one, you'll only have that option appear in front of you if you've lodged a grant application form that has been approved on our portal. Otherwise, if you've never lodged a grant claim, that page will be blank. So you can't see that form unless you've actually had a form that's pending or approved. And then again, as Ingrid has talked about on our flowcharts, you'll be informed on your application if you're successful. And then in that application, you'll need to include your receipts, invoices, a brief report about how the activity went and how it benefited you, your financial template on how your income and about your income and expenses, a breakdown into how many UTAS students attended versus non-UTAS students who's attended, include their ID numbers, and again, you can only submit one grant claim per approved grant. So make sure it's all minuted and put it in there efficiently. And of course, claims must be finalized by the 30th of November to allow for paperwork to be completed in time for TUSA auditing requirements, unless there's been a special arrangement that we've discussed with you. Otherwise, please lodge it by the 30th of November. It's always good practice to claim your grants as soon as you get them approved. Don't wait until the end of the year to get that reimbursed, because after that month, you may lose out on that if you don't lodge. Okay, so again, in our handbook, which is under our CNS resources, finances, you'll find our financial template as well as page 46 of our handbook over there. You can find a link to the handbook on our website. It'll be under CNS resources and info under community, or you could simply type on our search bar and say CNS handbook, and there'll be like 15 different links that link you to the same thing. Um, so in the handbook there. So yeah, please do read through that. And thank you all for coming. And also thank you for watching if you're watching this pre-recorded session. Our next ExecuLearn workshop will be on planning and running your events. So this will be a fairly lengthy workshop going through everything there is to know about how to, um, from ideation to basically launching and post-event um, uh, activities or administration required uh, to running events on or off campus in general. You can also scan our QR code here for a link to the ticket. But yeah, that'll happen next week on the 24th of April from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. via Zoom. Cool. So that's it. Thank you all for coming. Yep. I think